Here's something I want you to consider. If you subscribe to this channel, ultimately, everything I say is being filtered through American culture. So it's like you're getting free American culture lessons. It can be easy for an outsider to say, you ignorant American, which I get that on a daily basis, by the way. With all the videos I've got, I hear that constantly. But just think of it this way. Even if I sound ignorant at times, this is free American culture lessons. I'm showing you how a lot of Americans think that we don't question things like this until what I'm about to cover in this video, I wouldn't know if it weren't for the fact I make videos about all this. And people have been telling me in the comments, this is where I've been learning this. And it's still a challenge. I'm beginning to grasp it. I'm being honest and vulnerable with you by telling you that even now to make this video, it's a struggle for me to say this out loud. So here we go. I made a video called My Heritage, Can You Be Mexican with No Spanish DNA? I love this comment from Cristiano Martinez. Here it is, quote, Mexican is a nationality, not a race. While the vast majority of Mexicans are varying admixtures of Iberian, Spanish, and Native American, Mexico, like the United States, experienced immigration from all over the world. There are German, Lebanese, even Chinese Americans. What is problematic is the oversimplification of Mexico's history as this dual Spanish narrative. So many aspects of Mexico's culture can be attributed to immigration, including polka music and beer brought by German Mexicans, pastor tacos brought by Lebanese Americans, China poblano, etc. Not to mention Afro-Mexicans, mostly in the state of Guerrero, many of which are descendants of the slave trade that Mexico indeed participated in. All in all, Mexico should be thought of as a nationality, not an ethnicity. Generally speaking, however, northern Mexico is whiter and southern Mexico is more indigenous, end quote. So that's good. It's good to be reminded of these things. It's good to be educated and enlightened on these things. Right off the bat, let me just instantly jump in and agree with that last line about northern Mexico being whiter. My grandma was born in Buffalo, New York, but her parents were from Michoacan, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but it's southern Mexico. And she was very dark featured, very dark skin. And when I did my heritage DNA test, it showed that I'm 21.6% Central American. And that would imply that she was something like 80%, that she was mostly indigenous, which takes us back to I love this, the line right here in the middle of this comment, where it says, what is problematic is the oversimplification of Mexico's history as this dual Spanish Aztec narrative. I love that. I do that all the time in my videos. You know, I treat Mexican people as if they're kind of like a mix between, you know, Aztec, Mayan, just make that its own thing, and then like Spanish European, its own thing. Like there's this half and half when, you know, it's not that simple. What I will say is, and I love learning about all this, about how much ethnic mixing there was in Mexico, I will say this. Part of the reason why it's hard for me to consider that and why I actually learned from that comment is to put in this perspective. So, for example, where I grew up in Alabama and where I live now in Tennessee, when we are around Mexican people, that's not what we see. Like just last night, my family and I went to the Mexican restaurant right down the road from us. And I could see that people, our servers, such great people, but they had different features. One guy, our server, actually I thought, he almost looks like he'd be part Italian or something beyond, you know, and probably there's a good chance he is if I were to ask him. But for the most part, when we are around Mexicans, they kind of look like they're from the same general region. Again, my Mexican grandma, she didn't look like they did. She was from the South. And that's why one of the reasons I was so fascinated to take this test was to sort of figure that out. And she had even said that there were some people who looked like they were so dark they might be considered black that she had seen growing up at family reunions. So, of course, My mom does have African DNA. I don't, but it shows up in my mom's test. So, with all that being said, as far as an American mindset, though, we tend to naturally think of Mexican, as a different race. And I just made a video talking about how we see different skin color, we assume that you're of a different race, you're of a different ethnicity, even if you're still considered white by everyone else. That's how we tend to be. That's how we tend to do things. That's how we tend to process. We tend to celebrate and explore what's different than what we're used to seeing. And it's funny because months ago, in my videos I was saying, so my mom's half Mexican and that makes me a quarter. And I've been saying that my whole life. I remember in high school, it was like the first week in like 10th or 11th grade, and we had to do this. It was for English class, and we had to get a poster board and like cut and paste magazine articles or whatever we want to do, but describe ourselves through little magazine clippings, or we could like glue stuff to the thing. Well, one of the things that I did is I glued like a chili pepper on there. And I said, my grandma is Mexican, so I'm a quarter Mexican, and I like spicy food. I said, this is part of me. I love spicy food, and it's true. I don't eat any meal without some kind of hot peppers. And I said, that's probably part of my Mexican heritage, because my whole life I've been saying that I'm a quarter Mexican. My mom's whole life, she's been saying that she's half Mexican. No one's ever corrected her. No one's ever corrected me. No one's ever stopped us in real life and said, you can't be a quarter Mexican, because that doesn't exist. That's a nationality. No one has ever said that. I'm almost 37. In real life, outside of this camera, no one's ever stopped me and told me that. No one's ever told my mom that. That shows you, when you're American, living in an American culture, we treat Mexican more as a race than we do a nationality. That's how we think. That's how we do. So now that I've been corrected, I keep that in mind as I talk about it. And it's still, I fumble over my words as I try to explain. Okay, so my grandma was a Mexican American. Her parents were from Mexico. She grew up here. They didn't allow her to speak Spanish in the house because they wanted her to have American culture. She ended up marrying an Italian American who was also a first-generation American. It's just so complicated. It's easier just to say, I'm a quarter Mexican, I'm a quarter Italian. It's easy to say, my grandma was full-blooded Mexican and my grandfather was full-blooded Italian. And now, knowing all that I know, that's hilarious to say out loud, because you can't be full-blooded a Mexican. Full-blooded Mexican. But I'm telling you, that's pretty normal. If someone hears it, they wouldn't bat an eye at it. They wouldn't think, oh, how can you be full-blooded Mexican? I get it. It's funny. It's ridiculous. But in American culture, it's not that crazy if we hear it. We know what that means. That means something to us when we hear that. It's also ironic, too, because my grandfather, who was 100% Italian, we all know how that ended up, right, with my DNA test. I show 0% Italian. My mom shows 2% Italian. We show more Middle Eastern, and my mom shows more Middle Eastern and Jewish than anything for that side. So it's interesting. These DNA tests help us learn that. And because, again, if it weren't for me taking this test, and if it weren't for me making these videos, I wouldn't know that it's impossible to be a quarter Mexican, or my mom to be half Mexican. That can't exist. It never can, because Mexican is not a race. It's a nationality. And I'm still struggling as I'm saying this out loud. I feel like I'm betraying myself. I think probably because as an American, it's going against my culture. As an American, because going back to the other video that I recently did, like I said, if you have a different skin color, we're fascinated by your story. We're fascinated by your ethnicity. We want to know, like, you're different than us. That's cool. Teach me more about it, But just imagine, let me just close with this again. I'm almost 37. No one's ever corrected me or thought it was weird for me to say that I'm a quarter Mexican. And for my mom, in a couple months, she'll be 60. And no one has ever stopped her when she said that she's half Mexican. I need to ask her about that the next time I see her. So we'll have to do that video. Thanks for watching. I'd love to see your comments. The number one comment I'm expecting to receive in this video is, "You ignorant American." So I'm expecting that. I'm expecting like 12 thumbs down. But again, I'm giving you free American cultural lessons. I'm not here to justify I'm not here to justify how this works. I'm here just to explain it, to give you a vision, a matter of empathy that you couldn't have if it weren't for a guy like me. Not defending it, just explaining it so that you can learn American culture and why we have this perception of reality that's not quite legitimate.